Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Reserved Investments. And this is the video you didn't know you wanted. This is also the video you didn't know you needed. But I'm here to tell you, if you watch this video with an open mind from beginning to end, you're not only going to get an excellent education in the antiques and collectibles trade, you're also going to get a dire warning about one of the greatest speculative crazes that almost lasted from the 1990s all the way through the early 2000s. What we're going to be talking about today is, of course, the rise and fall of Longaberger Baskets as collectibles. Now, if you don't know what these are actually high-quality, handcrafted baskets where each one actually is signed and dated by the original creator. These really have very little collectible value in today's day and age, but what really happened that launched this market into the stratosphere back in the 1990s is quite fascinating. So that's why we are going to be talking about this. Now, in order to do this video justice, I do have to get you guys feeling all warm and fuzzy. You got to be excited not only to talk about antiques and collectibles or collectible finance, but also baskets. And it's usually the last thing. When I say baskets, most people lose interest. So I'm going to read you an excellent marketing blurb from the Longaberger Handmade Baskets brochure. Now, each one of these brochures actually came with one of these baskets back in the day. So this is a marketing blurb directly from the Longaberger company, and I'm hoping it makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside. So here we go. You ready? Uniquely American, inspired by nature. We've been inspired by nature's palette as we reach new heights of beauty, versatility, and function. Longaberger's signature warm, rich, and deep brown shades are wonderful expressions of our basket-making craft. We're also proud to introduce seasonal colors to complement the design and texture of our handcrafted baskets. Now you can mix and match to suit your home decor and personal style. It's all possible with Longaberger Baskets. Now, in order to do this video justice, we do have to get in my DeLorean time machine. But unfortunately, a lot of you guys think that we're going back to the 1990s. This is where I got to warn you, you're going to need to pack some penicillin because we're going back to 1830. You see, in order to do this video justice, we got to go all the way back to the beginning. So you guys understand why in the 1990s were people going crazy for handcrafted quality baskets? Why were they paying a premium for these pieces on eBay? Why was the demand level so high? So the reason why we're going back to 1830 is because that was when most historians agree that the Industrial Revolution was in full swing. If you don't know the importance of the Industrial Revolution, think of it this way. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, if you wanted a chair, or any piece of furniture for that matter, if you wanted a tablecloth, if you wanted a set of silverware, if you wanted a napkin holder, all that stuff had to be painstakingly made by hand and expertly crafted. Now, to be fair, those were very high quality items. Most of the people that made silverware or tablecloths or whatever it was, they knew what they were doing. They spent a lot of time perfecting their craft, and you were guaranteed, if you could afford it, to get a high quality piece. What the Industrial Revolution did was it basically allowed most goods to be cheaply mass produced. And there is the rub. These items didn't have the same type of quality or feel of items that had personal craftsmanship applied to them. But what the Industrial Revolution did well is that it brought the cost of living down for most people. Because now that we were mass producing a lot of these goods, they could be sold more cheaply. So the standard of living for most people at this time during the Industrial Revolution increased dramatically. Now, this is where whenever we have a revolution in history, usually there is a counter-revolution or a counter-culture to that revolution. Well, right around 1850, there was something called the start of the arts and crafts movement. This took place as a counter movement to what was seen as the poor quality of mass production. So there were a lot of people at this time that were growing tired of mass-produced goods. Even though it was good for society and civilization by and large, they missed the good old days. They missed the days where you went to the blacksmith, you went to the candlestick maker, you went to whoever sewed the linens, and you got all this stuff produced, and it had that personal feel to it. So the arts and crafts movement was a counter-revolution to the Industrial Revolution. Now, the arts and crafts movement lasted from 1850 to 1920. And interestingly enough, it was an international design reform movement that originated in Britain, spread to the United States, and it was a direct reaction to the poor quality of mass production. It was actually led by one of the key players in this was William Morris. I'm not going to go into detail on who that person was. It really doesn't matter to the tune of talking about Longaberger Baskets, but it does matter when we discuss the arts and crafts movement. So if you want to do research on William Morris, feel free to do that in your own time. That name may come up in another later video. Hint, hint. That's why I'm putting that name into your mind right now. Now, the arts and crafts movement pretty much emphasized handcrafted, simple, natural forms of items to restore dignity to labor and improve the decorative arts. So basically what happened was you had some people sitting around thinking that, you know what, mass production's great and all, we really miss the handcrafted items that came before. So this spawned this counter-revolution. Now, obviously, a lot of the materials used in the arts and crafts movement were, of course, wood, stone, natural textiles, and the like. So you can see where I'm going with this. Now, why is this important? Why did I just spend roughly 5 minutes talking about the Industrial Revolution and also the arts and crafts movement, which is believed to have lasted from 1850 all the way up through 1920, believe it or not? Well, this is very vital because you see, if we now go and get my DeLorean time machine and go to the 1980s, if you were to look at what popular antiques were selling for insane sums of money back then, believe it or not, it's a lot of your traditional antiques, your primitives, your folk art, your handcrafted items. Remember, this was in a pre-internet era. So if you were going to do business as an antique dealer or collector back in the 1980s, you had to see customers in person. You had to attend auctions. You had to go to antique marts, antique fairs, antique shops. And what was really big at this time was handcrafted items from the time before. So again, this is your traditional antiques. This is furniture. This is primitives. This is folk art and the like. Now, another development that was happening in the 1980s, if you guys recall, was there was a lot of money being generated. The income tax reform that we had allowed rich people and corporations to profit immensely. That's not a political statement. I don't care whether you agree or disagree with that. I'm just stating the facts. With the Reagan administration, Wall Street was turning record profits. You had outsourcing starting, a lot of mergers, a lot of job loss. There was a changing of the guard, so to say. And Wall Street wanted badly to get in to alternate asset classes. If you don't believe me, all you have to do is study art. You're going to see in the 1980s, this is where high-profile, very wealthy people started to pay incredible sums for pieces of contemporary art. This is where Sotheby's and Christie's really made a name for themselves catering to this market. They made a lot of money, too, in the process. Also, in the 1980s, you did have Wall Street flirting with this idea that alternate asset classes are the future. Case in point, we had the Great Coin Bubble. We had traditional antiques soaring at auction. If you would look at record-breaking sales back in the 1980s, you would see a lot of traditional antiques becoming in vogue with celebrities and very wealthy individuals and industrialists. So this was all taking place in the 1980s. Now, interestingly enough, a lot of people were watching that from afar. They were seeing it unfold, and they were going, you know, how can we capture those dollars? How can we create products that have that old-time feel, that were created by a craftsman? How can we sell them for a premium in the open marketplace? This is what led to Longaberger. Because here is the history of the company. The Longaberger Basket Company was founded by Dave Longaberger in 1973 in Dresden, Ohio. And believe it or not, the company got off to a rough start. At first, people were not interested in baskets. People were not really mesmerized by these products. Well, again, in the 1980s, with the rise of interest in traditional antiques, primitives, folk art that came out of the arts and crafts movement that lasted from 1850 all the way up through 1920, people were seeing those items sell for a record price. And guess what? They said, well, gee, we want items like that, but we can't afford to pay those record prices that celebrities are paying. So there was an opportunity seen here. What happened was Longaberger Baskets started to go back to the drawing board and think, how can we properly market our product that gets it in the hands of consumers, our most die-hard customers, and causes people to want to spend more on these items? So what was born was the idea to sell these items utilizing a multi-level marketing strategy. Now, if you don't know what that means, let me state it this way. Longaberger baskets were never sold in retail stores. Do you know what Tupperware is? Did you ever hear of a Tupperware party? That's how Longaberger perfected his craft. He utilized house parties to sell these items. So somebody would reach out to the company, usually a woman, of course. She would get a catalog, and she would say, hey, I want to host a party with some of my girlfriends. We want to get together. We're going to go through your catalog, and I'm going to allow orders to be placed for these baskets. That's how this item got off the ground in the 1980s. There was virtually no advertising at all devoted to Longaberger baskets. It was all word of mouth. This, again, would be the equivalent of Tupperware in the 1950s and 60s. So people had house parties. They ordered this stuff. Remember, this was at a time before 50 Shades of Grey. So I guess boring housewives, rather than experiment with BDSM, I guess they just said, fuck it, I'm going to order 50 freaking baskets to take care of me. And, you know, you can put some interesting things in these baskets. As a matter of fact, you'll sometimes see videos done online about the 1990s, and you'll see like a Longaberger basket with Beanie Babies in them, simply because it kind of represents what was happening in the 1990s. Now, again, we're still in the 1980s here. So this quickly got off the ground, and slowly but surely, this became a thing where bored housewives didn't just want to own one basket, they wanted 2 or 3. And each year, new designs would come out, and of course, they would retire older baskets. Now, because these are high-quality baskets, and I got to give them credit, these are beautiful, handcrafted, high-quality baskets. Each basket is actually signed and dated by the creator. So, of course, the company started retiring older baskets, and of course, demand being on what it is, people wanted to own some of those older baskets. So, of course, they had to turn to the secondary market. Now, all through the 80s, all through the early 90s, demand was increasing every single year, as were sales. Well, then, guess what happened in September of 1995? The advent of what is now known as eBay. It wasn't called eBay back then. It was called Auction Web. I was one of the first sellers on the platform back in September of 1995 when it first premiered. The name eBay did not come into existence, if I recall correctly, until the end of 1996, early 1997, when the company hit mass success and started advertising on radio and television. One of the first promotional taglines for eBay back in the day was "Shop Victoriously." If you want to learn more about the history of eBay, on a side note, you should read this book that I've recommended before, Killer Stuff and Tons of Money. It goes into great detail on eBay's effect on the antiques and collectibles trade back in the day. Now, getting back to Longaberger Baskets. With the advent of eBay, people learned that they could list some of these desirable baskets on eBay, and because there was a willing and able, enthusiastic collector base, people would pay a premium for these baskets. Now, the question that I always get asked, Sean, back in the 90s, in the early 2000s, how much did these baskets cost? Well, on the low end, you could find some baskets that sold anywhere from $80 to $100. On the high end, a lot of the baskets sold for $100 to $200, with some limited edition baskets selling for close to $300 back in the 1990s. Now, I'll let you use an inflation calculator to figure out how much that is in 2026 dollars. So you can see there was a massive collector base appearing for this market. And there were a lot of speculators and collectors that took advantage of that demand and sold into the hype and made a lot of money. Now, the other thing that you got to keep in mind, and this is where I give credit to the Longaberger Basket Company, they kind of knew in the back of their mind that, how many baskets can one woman buy? Let's be realistic. I mean, if you're somebody back in the day, if you owned like 50 Longaberger baskets that you bought at retail, meaning you went to one of these parties and you ordered basket after basket until you now have a room full of them, more than likely you're probably going to end up on an episode of Hoarders at some point in the future. This was not a sustainable business model. So the company also expanded into ceramics. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any of the ceramic offerings that the company produced back in the day to show you. I will tell you, there are people that actually like the ceramics that they produced, not for their collectability, but for their durability. They were high quality pieces. I know a lot of people that love the ceramic mugs, that love the plates, and still use them in their house to this very day. So now, how did all this end? How did it all implode? Well, unfortunately, what happened was the company's peak year was the year 2000. That's where they did over $1 billion in sales. As a matter of fact, one interesting tidbit here, I'm going to show my screen here. The company's headquarters was actually shaped like a hand-woven basket. Believe it or not, what you're seeing on screen, that is an actual building in Dresden, Ohio, that is still there to this day. It is, of course, vacant because the company did go bankrupt. But believe it or not, their headquarters was shaped like a very large, 7-story tall, hand-woven basket. That was the Longaberger headquarters. Now, if you're wondering what happened, unfortunately, in 1999, Dave Longaberger, the guy who was pretty much a genius behind the marketing, behind the creativity of this great company, he died. And the company started to encounter declining sales as a result, not only due to his death, but also due to changing consumer tastes, the recession, because remember, right around 2000, 2001, we had the dot-com crash. That did affect this as well. And also, the company really tried diversifying into too many product lines to the point where a lot of their core customers thought that the basket suffered a little around this time. Now, believe it or not, the company did survive for many, many years after the peak and the death of the founder in 1999. They did, however, finally file bankruptcy and start liquidating the company in 2018. And the company, believe it or not, was revived in 2019 under new ownership, and they focused on a broader range of home goods, but unfortunately, it never captured the massive frenzy of the original line. So as of today, I'm sorry to tell you, Longaberger Baskets make a great basket. I mean, if you find one in the wild and you really want to own a basket, it's well worth picking up. If you're attempting to invest in these items, though, this is the bad news, guys. Longaberger basket speculation is generally considered high risk, as the market crashed following the company's peak, leaving most common baskets valued at low thrift store prices. Most of these items sell on eBay, even the sought-after limited edition baskets that were once seen selling for $350, in some cases $500 or more on the secondary market. Most of these baskets are valued at less than $60 a piece, with a lot of the smaller ones like this one probably selling for $30 or less on the secondary market. Now, that doesn't mean if you're at a thrift store, you come across these, somebody doesn't know what they are, they put them out for $5 a piece. Yes, it may be worth picking up. Remember, at the end of the day, as their what do I want to say here? As their actual use, what they were meant to do, they do it very well. They are a high quality basket. As a collectible, though, it's pretty much time has passed. And interestingly enough, I do have to state this speculative craze for these Longaberger baskets actually lasted almost 15 years. The Longaberger company generated more revenues than that of Beanie Babies back in the day. It's just that everybody likes to focus on Beanie Babies. Everybody likes to remember Pogs. Everybody even likes to focus on the speculative frenzy of Pez dispensers. Nobody really wants to talk about Longaberger baskets. I'm here to do this market justice and to warn you about how these crazes get started, how they get shot into the stratosphere, and how they usually come crashing down. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you want me to do a follow-up to this video, please also let me know that information too. If you are subscribed to this channel, I will see you in another upcoming video. And if you're wondering what this is on my wrist, spoiler alert, now that we're at the end of the video where no one's watching this, I actually went to Zolocon 2026 in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania today. That is roughly 20 minutes from my house. Maybe, just maybe, I might do a video on it. Thank you for watching and have a great night.